This is a 100-year-old suitcase portable phonograph. In fact, the machine, which was called an Orphola, similar to you've probably heard of the Victrola or the Gramophola, this is an Orphola, was made by the Royal Record Company during the 1920s. This machine cost me $10 at a record store, and when I got it, everything was there, however, it was not fully intact. The reproducer was badly corroded and fractured, and parts were strewn all over the inside of the machine. I had to fish various pieces of the reproducer out from within the machine itself, and even when I was able to piece it together with glue and Gorilla Tape, the sound that was reproduced was very, very poor. And this was not a surprise. Now to show you what I'm talking about, I'll open this thing up. This is the turntable, which is driven inside by a clockwork mechanism, which is wound by this crank, which goes in this hole here, and the reproducer. Which holds the steel needle. Now you have to change that needle after every play, which I'll get to that in a minute. Now these types of machines produce sound by vibrating that needle which is connected to a diaphragm which lives inside the reproducer itself. And that diaphragm amplifies the sound so that it essentially vibrates the air inside this column of air inside this what's called a tone arm, and then this box inside here, which is basically like a little horn, amplifies the sound even more, and therefore the recordings they're called 78 RPM records, they're made out of shellac, can be reproduced. Now these types of machines often they have a rubber gasket outside the diaphragm inside the reproducer. They have two of them, and with age these gaskets become hard and lose their elasticity, and since it's holding the diaphragm in place, they can begin to break apart, and when this happens, the diaphragm is no longer held in place securely and rattles when you play a record, causing a horrible buzzing sound. Now when I got this old reproducer was no exception, and when I got it, it was for $10, and the reproducer was lying there. I had to fish pieces out of the machine itself because the back of the reproducer here was in pieces, and I did try and glue them together and put Gorilla Tape on it, and it still didn't sound good because, like I said, there's nothing holding the diaphragm in place inside the reproducer. So, and of course if it was like a Victrola, like a common model, I'm sure you've heard of a Victrola, there are people who can restore those reproducers, but an Orphola, it's such a rare company. It's a pretty rare phonograph actually, and nobody could. You had to buy a new reproducer essentially. There's no way out of it. Now I have access to 3D printers through a university, so I took careful measurements of the part on the back of the reproducer and modeled it in a CAD program and converted it to a 3D printable file. With a few small modifications, I was able to fit this plastic piece in place of the original component and install it in the tone arm, copying the original design as close as possible. Before doing so, though, I fitted a gasket along the inside edge of the side of the diaphragm, on the inside of the diaphragm, facing the new 3D printed part. Even though there were two gaskets in the reproducer originally, having one gasket replaced it sufficient. The old gasket is still in there, but having a flexible new gasket pushing up against that pretty much remedies the problem entirely. Also, the other gasket is significantly harder to get to. The gasket is a 3/16 inch wide with an outer diameter of 2 1/8 inches, cut down to size because I couldn't find the exact size needed for this particular reproducer. And after this restoration, which cost me about $3, $3 or $4, it now sounds like a new phonograph right off the production line. That's your brake. And the brake is a little bit worn out because it's an entirely mechanical mechanism, no electricity involved whatsoever. What I'm doing now is winding a spring. It's a lot like winding a clock. My restored Orphola